Washington Wizards owner Ted Leonsis relayed details of a conversation with soon-to-be two-time All-Star Bradley Beal shortly after the struggling Washington Wizards learned John Wall would miss the remainder of the season. Bradley Beal told me, "We got enough. We're going to make the playoffs. We're not going to let you down," Leonsis said in January. Consider that position from Beal completely serious and one that remains despite the Wizards' uphill climb with only 12 regular season games. That's just not the only reason Beal pleaded to the team owner for more time. He wanted a reprieve from last season's finish. He desired a chance to lead the Wizards. Largely on the back of his stellar work over the last 35 games, the point at which Washington knew its cupboard wouldn't be full the remainder of the regular season, Beal is delivering a campaign worthy of All-NBA status. He scored 40 points in Saturday's 135-128 win over the Memphis Grizzlies one night after dropping 40 against the Hornets. "The way he's playing, the way he's improved, the way he's led, my very biased opinion he's All-NBA the way he's playing," Wizards head coach Scott Brooks said. "There might be too many guards for the available 6 ballot slots, but it's frankly preposterous to consider Beal unworthy. Seriously, don't. Most of all, don't you dare ask Beal directly if he's a credible candidate. What do you think?" he shot back when a reporter posed that question after Saturday's win. There have been other times when Beal was asked effectively to justify his status among the league's best, notably with the All-Star voting. "I have to go through this again," said the irritated guard. Surrounded by the usual media horde inside the Wizards' locker room, Beal passed on answering in words because his season-long performance made the response obvious. There are numerous stats worth touting. Among them, he leads the league in minutes played, ranks third in scoring since the All-Star break with 31.2 points while shooting 50% from the field and 40% on three-pointers. He set a career high with 5 40-point games this season. That's the most by a Wizards player in a season since Gilbert Arenas in 2006-07. Saturday, Beal set a career with 9 three-pointers on 12 attempts. Beal ended the media session using those in his vicinity as mouthpieces for the All-NBA question. All in favor say, Those that spoke repeated as instructed 2 months after Leonsis and the Wizards front office heard Beal's plea for a continuance. Washington did trade away 2 key pieces in Otto Porter and Markieff Morris before the February 7 trade deadline, but didn't tear down the roster to the foundation. Maybe there isn't enough overall talent to contend with the Eastern Conference heavyweights or even finish among the top 8. Sufficient help existed for Beal to push forward, not for personal glory, but to lead the way, to see what is possible in that main man role. Though Beal had that status for a chunk of last season when Wall missed 41 games with injuries, the point guard's eventual return hovered over the scene. Beal and the team flourished for long stretches but faded late, entering the playoffs as the 8th seed. Brad stepped up and delivered night in and night out, but it takes a lot to do that, Brooks said Friday of Beal's 2017-18 work. He wasn't used to that. You try to manage the physical part of it, but the mental part wears you down. Beal learned lessons from that experience. Despite the heavy workload, he remains stunningly productive. Despite the personal growth, Beal's focus remains team-oriented and win-centric. After Friday's 116-110 loss to Charlotte, he left the locker room before speaking with reporters and then woke up at 6 a.m. frustrated. "I didn't sleep well. I was mad all night," Beal said. "Have been up all day just thinking the game from last night, just thinking about how important it was to get one tonight. No matter what it took. The obvious note is the starry stats. That's not the key with Beal and this version of the Wizards. For the most part, they've remained competitive nightly despite the obvious rotation losses. Though 30-40 on the season, Washington is 17-18 over those last 35 games. Beal's focused team-first approach fuels the effort. He only took 17 field goal attempts for those 40 points Saturday. Beal wanted the win but knew this wasn't just about his numbers. "Every game matters at this point. I really wanted this game," Beal said Saturday. "I just made sure I was locked in and led the team and the rest of the guys will follow." Despite Saturday's win, the Wizards sit in 11th place in the Eastern Conference, 3 games back of the 8th-place Heat for the 8th and final playoff berth. Only 12 games remain in the regular season. Should Washington fall short of the playoffs, only a certifiable loon or a basketball illiterate would lay blame with Beal. Then again, Beal likely puts the onus on himself if the goal isn't reached. He keeps pushing for more from himself and teammates. That's why he didn't want Leonsis to sell. "We're positive. I know I am," Beal said Saturday of the team's playoff hopes. "At the end of the day, I want to make the playoffs. I'm sure everybody else in here is too. We're not out of it until the end of the year games. We're going to keep fighting and pushing because we've got a chance. It's going to be tough, but I love the direction we're headed in." There's a strong argument the Wizards are better off leaning into their current draft lottery status rather than aim for the playoffs. Just don't try selling that to Bradley Beal. More Wizards news. The Washington Wizards just finished a critical duo of games for their playoff hopes in NBA draft lottery position. They lost to the Charlotte Hornets on Friday, then turned around and beat the Memphis Grizzlies on Saturday. These are the teams directly ahead of Washington in the Eastern Conference standings and the draft lottery order, respectively. Despite dropping Friday's contest, the Wizards have scraped together a respectable 6-4 record in their last 10 games. Where does all this leave them in the East, and, conversely, in the lottery order? Eastern Conference standings. With a 30-40 record, Washington hasn't budged from the 11th spot in the East, trailing Brooklyn 36-35 in 7th, Miami 32-36 in 8th, Orlando 32-38 in 9th, and Charlotte 31-37 in 10th. As of Saturday evening, Washington is 3 games out of the 8th and final playoff spot. There are 12 games left on the schedule, so while the Wizards are inching closer to the 8th seed, their window to get it done may be closing faster. They're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. If a couple other teams decide to take a major tumble, Washington could be poised to step over them. NBA Draft Lottery look. While Bradley Beal has been dragging his team upward in 0.5 game increments, those 40-point, 40-minute efforts are hurting their lottery odds. The Wizards had been 7th in the lottery order for several weeks, but the Grizzlies overtook them, bumping them to 8 heading into the weekend. Washington's victory over Memphis on Saturday happened to coincide with a Pelicans loss, pushing the Wiz Kids down to 9th position. The 9th spot translates to 20.3% odds of drawing a top 4 pick, hello, Duke freshman, and 4.5% odds of landing number 1. Slipping 2 spots is a rather large deal in terms of lottery odds. Simulating the drawing, the 9th-place team gets a top 4 pick once in every 5 simulations. The 7th-place team gets a top 4 pick once in every 3 simulations. Look ahead. At the risk of sounding alarmist, the Wizards can't play at their current level if they want to make the playoffs. They're going to need to shift into a higher gear. The coming week brings 4 games, including a road and home back-to-back. 3 of their next 4 opponents are playoff teams. The week after next is a West Coast road trip. On the flip side, the tough schedule benefits Washington in terms of climbing the lottery ladder. Games to watch: Hornets at Heat, Sunday 1 p.m. Pelicans at Magic, Wednesday 7 p.m. More Wizards news: the Washington Wizards topped the Memphis Grizzlies 135-128 on Saturday night. Here are 5 observations from the game. 1. The 2018-19 season for the Wizards has been so far defined by brilliance from Bradley Beal amid subpar results for the team overall. On Saturday night, the rest of the Wizards held up their end of the bargain. The Wizards knocked off the Grizzlies behind 40 points by Bradley Beal, the second straight night he reached the 40 mark. That tied a franchise record for the consecutive 40-point games with 7 other players, among them Gilbert Arenas and Michael Jordan. Beal also moved into 4th place in franchise history with his 12th 40-point game. The only guys ahead of him are Arenas, 28, Walt Bellamy, 23, and Bernard King, 13. The Wizards have now won 3 of their last 4 and 5 of 8. The road ahead, though, is about to get tougher. They host the Jazz, go on the road to Chicago, then welcome the Nuggets and Heat to town. 3 of those teams are in the playoff picture currently, and the Bulls have improved since trading for Otto Porter Jr. Beal got most of his points from the perimeter, where he set a career high with 9 three-pointers. He had 4 of them in the first quarter alone. Those 9 threes were the most for a Wizards Bullets player since Trevor Ariza made 10 back in 2014. Ariza is the only other player in franchise history to make more than 8 in a game. The list of Wizards or Bullets players to make 8 three-pointers or more in a game is a random one. Also on there are Arenas, Rex Chapman, Deshaun Stevenson and Bojan Bogdanovic. 3 Bobby Portis had a nice bounce-back game. After combining for only 9 points in his last 2 outings, he was much better against the Grizzlies. It didn't start that way. In the first quarter, Portis airmailed a dunk attempt and was called for traveling. But soon after, he settled in and over was rewarded for running the floor and being active in the lane. Portis had 18 points, 6 rebounds and shot 3 for 5 from 3. It was much more like the Portis we are used to seeing. He spread the floor and did work on the glass. Portis, by the way, is now shooting 45.2% from 3 on the season. For a big reason the Grizzlies stuck around in this game was the first half play by Chandler Parsons. Yeah, that Chandler Parsons, the guy who has barely played this season because he was at odds with the front office. Though Parsons has become famous for not living up to his contract, he turned back the clock against the Wizards. He popped off for 11 points in 10 minutes in the first half, including a swish 3 and a series of nifty moves off the dribble. Parsons ended up with 16 points, a season high. Even he can score against the Wizards' defense these days, apparently. Joakim Noah also got in on the action. Much like Parsons, his best years are behind him. But he poured in 15 points with 8 rebounds and gave the Wizards bigs some real trouble. 5 Jordan McRae was with the Wizards for Saturday's game, though he didn't play. If he had, that would have been something, given he played for the Capital City Go-Go in the G League earlier in the afternoon. McRae, though, will probably be around a lot more in the coming weeks. After being with the Wizards on Saturday, he has 8 days left on his 45-day two-way contract clock. But that only counts until the G League regular season ends on March 23, with 7 days until March 23. The Wizards are in the clear as far as having to convert him to an NBA contract. Technically, they already were, as travel days and road off days do not count. But either way, expect to see McRae a lot more from here on out. More Wizards.